Hello, welcome to the cult of accelerationism. What we're going to talk about today is the maximum chaos timeline for 2020, and not much left of 2020, but what we got can be pretty exciting. So here we got a 2020 presidential election map, and you see both of them are just shy of 270. And so where that really comes down to is Florida. So, boom, that brings Trump over. Boom, that brings Biden over. 277, 274. So what's interesting is, Florida's always the toss-up. And what I'm going to talk about is what would be the outcome of this election that would bring just the absolute most fuckery and chaos. And that would be it being looking like this on November 4th. And then some of these votes start to come in and, it turns like that. So what do you guys think would be the outcome of a Trump victory, and then maybe a week later, 10 days later, once they count a few more ballots, it swaps? I think that might start getting some of the right-wing people out. I think some right-wing protesters might actually start happening. And we already know left-wing protesters are already out and about. So I think it would be curious to see what would happen. You have both of these groups now protesting. What would happen right there? 2016, we had Broward County, right? And so we had Brenda Snipes. We're going to go back to 2016 for a moment here. Right north of Miami. So you got Hollywood, you got a couple other shady places, but it's a pretty populous county for it. So we have... So here we see the Broward County map. And then we go to 2016, admitting illegal aliens vote. She admitted that in a lawsuit. So in court, Snipes acknowledged some non-citizens and felons have voted despite not being eligible right before major elections when groups are actively registering new voters. What side do you think felons and illegal aliens would vote? So we see that, right? A little bit of flashback. It's just another article for it. We have NPR ignoring it. As usual, I mean, that's no surprise. Then we have an interesting story here. So it was originally written June 26th, and it's now just been updated in 2018. So in May of 2017, on May 24th, they revealed it, that a 37-year-old federal prosecutor was found in Broward County, or Hollywood. We talked about that being in Broward. So, while we go here, he had a gunshot wound to his head, and he was found washed up on a beach. So, they immediately, within a month, I think, here, early in the U.S. Attorney's Office and the guy's trolling online forums with anime avatars. So the FBI determined it had no connection to his employment as prosecutor or his federal criminal cases, leaving the death investigation in the Hollywood Police Department. So you have a federal prosecutor murdered, and they just leave it up to local police. Hollywood Police Department. not state police, not federal police. He's a U.S. attorney. He's not a Florida attorney. So early on, they knew. So they didn't know who killed him. They didn't know why he was killed. But early on, they determined that he had no connection to his employment. That's good that they were able to be so sure about that so early. You know, you always wonder when the first thing a person comes out is how it wasn't connected to something before we know anything about it, really. Do they want it to not be connected to anything? Do they want us to not think it's connected to anything? Who knows? So he handled cases on foreigners illegally entering the country, passport fraud, and visa violations. There's a lot of Russians down there. Not Russia, but there's actually, there's a lot of Russian women who fly in and basically do the anchor baby thing, but in Florida. So we have that. A few drug distribution. Of course, they had to mention that it was fake news. This is Miami Herald, by the way. Miami Herald. So, discredited theories. I'm glad they had to throw in Seth Rich. So, as we go on. So, they said in June they were still actively investigating it and waiting for new evidence to come in. So, then they concluded it on Thursday, so in August. So in June, they said they needed more evidence to come in. In August, they ruled it as a suicide. So this guy on a boat, I'm assuming, shot himself in the head. Or shot himself in the head while going for a swim, or while on the water in a riptide, which pulled him out to sea. I mean, how much are we supposed to believe at this point? But regardless, so this shows some funky stuff's happening in Broward County. Right here, Miami Herald, Broward County. So it seems a little funky, a good old suicide, bullet to the back of the head. And so here we go. A little bit more Heritage Foundation. I know could be conservative, right-leaning. But we're just, you got to accept certain things that you see. Unless you don't want to accept it, then you don't have to. I mean, it's an American right to be wrong and be stubborn about it. So we see a bunch of stuff here. Institute concluded to report thousands of votes in the 2016 election were illegal, duplicate votes. Having lived in California at some point in my life, I have also voted in California. And to walk you guys through it, you walk up to a polling area, you find a big sheaf of papers attached to the outside, hanging outside the front of it with no poll workers there. And you see, you look and you find your name. And if you find your name on there and you see everyone else's name and everyone else's address on there, and you go in and you say, I am Mr. XY. And they say, okay, Mr. XY, are you at 123 Go F Yourself Lane? And you say, yes, that's correct. And they say, okay, here's your ballot. I've asked before, do you want to see my ID? Do you need to see my ID? No, you don't. So, and then you go vote. So as you can see, or as you just heard, and you can ask other people in California, I doubt it's changed in the years since then. It doesn't take a lot. Mr. XY could have been Mr. BW. You could even say you're nowadays. You can even say you're, Miss Nancy Lane. And what are they going to say? No, you're not? In California? Oh. So here we're seeing some more stuff with more registered voters. Of course. That's jumping the gun a little bit. So as we see, going back to the map, it's ripe. It's ripe for some chaos to happen. So my prediction for 2020, because if you're going to have a year where stuff goes terribly wrong, this is going to be it. This is definitely going to be it. So over here at the Cult of Accelerationism, we either tolerate, there's many different believers. You can either tolerate, advocate, or embrace the turn of the wheel. The wheel that keeps on turning. Every rotation goes a little bit faster. And we find ourselves sliding into the abyss. And if you've seen any of the other videos, that is something that is both inevitable and not to be feared. It's the natural state. And that's just how it is. And so I think we will see, my prediction, if this call is going to turn out 2020 style, a 2020 style outcome to our presidential election. November 4th, here's what you have. Boom. Everybody's excited. As the days and the weeks go by and more votes are counted, suddenly goes to this. That seems a little different, doesn't it? That seems a little different. It's North Carolina, and that's pretty on the line. Minnesota, I think, can go either way. I think Pennsylvania will go for Trump. But so we see it switch. And suddenly we see Biden ahead. Biden's getting the votes. And once that happens, a voter fraud story comes out about Broward County and voter fraud. Maybe it turns the state. Maybe there's another county in North Carolina where, some fuckery goes on. Minnesota. And it turns blue. And now you have Trump voters who just leave me alone and don't take too much of my money, are now feeling robbed. Oh, that's why it didn't go that way. There we go. So that can still say. So now they're saying, oh, we've just been robbed. And what that looks like. What that looks like is pretty chaotic. That's some pretty good chaos. Now you have right-wing Republicans and conservatives out there protesting the theft of an election. You have a typical liberal Democrat response. And all of a sudden you have both groups in the street. And then some of these stories start to come out. Broward County, other counties, a county in North Carolina, a county in Montana, Minnesota. And I think that could get us kicking off. I would not be surprised. That's really the only thing I could think that would act as a spark, that would ignite both sides. Because the left, they want to rumble. The media wants the right to rumble so they can villainize them. And the right really hasn't been feeding in to the provocation as of yet. That could change. That could change. We're more divided than ever. Divorce rates skyrocketing. And then another article. Ignore the title. Or I'll show you some of the reasons. They're pretty funny, just as a little non sequitur here. But 50% of the marriages in the United States end in divorce. Of those divorces, 80% are initiated by women. That's interesting. And there's other channels and other videos that could be done about that and go into it much better than I ever could. But what we see here is women initiate, another American Sociological Association, as much as they would like to be considered a hard science, it is soft, found that women initiate 2/3 of divorces, 69%. Found even a higher rate, around 90% of divorces initiated by women with a college education. And we're a divided country. If down to the smallest unit of governance, a family unit, right? There's the smallest unit, which is an individual. But the smallest unit of governance in which affairs are managed on a cooperative or a communal basis is the family. That's the core unit of a society. They're getting split up 50% of the time. So to wrap it up, that is my official, the Cult of Accelerationism's official 2020 election prediction: maximum chaos, maximum turmoil. And I just hope y'all are ready for the ship to get a little rocky, things to get a little uncertain. I don't know how it'll go, but I think, especially in this year, has shown us that anything is possible. And I hope you all are looking forward to the show, because I know we will be. As always, thanks for tuning in.